Hi, my name is Lucian Barnes, and I'm a U.S. Foreign Service officer. I've had the pleasure of serving in the Foreign Service for the last 13 years, and they've been 13 awesome years. I've served both domestically and overseas in Washington. Most recently, I served overseas at a U.S. mission as a deputy political chief. In my personal opinion, Foreign Service officers, including political officers, play a key role in supporting Americans and their interests. They do so by developing close relationships with foreign counterparts, as well as developing a deep understanding of local cultures and local political landscapes. In turn, they share this information with policymakers in Washington that develop policies that support the U.S. economy, military, and foreign policy overall.
Hello, my name is Chuka Asike, and I'm a U.S. Foreign Service officer with the State Department. Today, I want to talk to you about diplomacy and what it means to me, but more specifically, how diplomacy impacts the lives of American people, and frankly, how it improves the lives of American people. Diplomacy for me is more of an art than a science. When I think about diplomacy, and I define it, it's the art of managing the relationships with foreign governments, foreign peoples, foreign businesses, all over the world. And it's something that I spend a lot of time thinking about because while we work on these complex issues, at the back of our minds, we're always thinking about how can this advance American interests? And in my career, I focused on economic diplomacy. So at the heart of that idea is, how can this help create jobs and improve the prosperity for America in general, as well as our partners? I've had the opportunity to work all over the world, from the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. And part of my work on economic issues has been helping to negotiate complex trade negotiations and also trying to manage commercial disputes on behalf of American companies, as well as being an advocate for their interests. And for me, this is a very rewarding effort because I know that every little thing that we do to help an American company working overseas or operating in a foreign market, I know that it's going to help improve the prosperity for America, as well as create jobs. And that's something that we're all laser focused on. More recently, while I worked on an Africa portfolio, we set up commercial deal teams at our embassies. And these deal teams were essentially geared at improving the way that American diplomats interact with American companies while overseas, to make sure that we really understand their needs and that we can address some of the issues that they face, and more specifically, the challenges that they confront in markets. We press for more level playing fields and transparency so that our American companies could really have a shot at winning contracts and succeeding. And then ultimately, we want to also promote American solutions to an array of complex problems all over the world. Because I know that American companies, whether it's in the energy industry or in finance or in the social or educational sphere, we really have top-notch solutions that help improve people's lives.
My name is Branka, and I'm a Foreign Service officer with the Department of State. I am grateful for the opportunity to share my experiences on such a timely topic. The role of the State Department, my role, and the role of my fellow economic officers in Washington and in the field is to ensure that American prosperity underpins our diplomatic efforts, and that following the pandemic, we work to build a more stable and a more inclusive global economy. I worked most recently in the Office of the Chief Economist to help advance these efforts. During a period of unprecedented global economic instability and uncertainty, we leveraged our access to some of the most renowned economists and policy experts to gain insights on the macroeconomic and financial issues that impact U.S. economic policy. These conversations helped us to better understand the key drivers of fiscal, monetary, and public health policy in the context of how multi-speed global economic recovery from COVID-19 could threaten the flow of capital and trade Beyond this most recent assignment, I have been fortunate to serve the American people over the course of my career to strengthen economic ties, to promote democracy, and to help American citizens. This has included assignments in Moscow, Warsaw, and Belgrade, and in Washington in the Bureau of European and Eurasian Affairs. As a daughter of Romanian immigrants who fled persecution during the height of the Cold War, I am especially grateful for the opportunity to serve my country. I look forward to continuing to advance our democratic values and to safeguarding our economic interests in an increasingly complex world.
Hello, my name is Navarro. I am a diplomat with the U.S. State Department, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about how my work benefits the American people. I've served all around the world, and I've been able to hone and use those experiences to the benefit of the American people. I've served in El Salvador, Australia, Ghana, and in several positions here in Washington. I just recently completed an assignment in the State Department's Operations Center, the department's 24/7 Crisis and Communications Hub. That office is composed of two sub-offices. One is the Watch, and the other is Crisis Management and Strategy. I served on the Watch side of the house. I served there as a senior Watch officer for a year, and then I served in our front office management team as the coordinator of the Watch. We coordinate crises around the world. We coordinate response, the State Department's response to foreign policy crises around the world. So when something is happening somewhere, we're oftentimes the first office to know about it. And we get that information to our policymakers here, principally the Secretary of State. We get that information to the Secretary of State and his team as quickly as we can, oftentimes with analysis and additional insight from our interagency partners and also from our embassies abroad. We also coordinate communications for the Secretary of State and his team, ensuring that they have the ability to be in contact with their foreign counterparts or their counterparts here in Washington whenever they like. I think those are our kind of two principal things that we do for the Secretary and his team, but we also we do a lot of other things as well that directly benefit just everyday Americans. I'll point out two things very quickly here that we do. One is we help Americans in emergency situations. So if you're overseas and you're traveling and you have a health emergency, or you're destitute, or you're stranded somewhere, or you need to get in contact with a loved one back home, whatever the situation is, if you can call the State Department's Operations Center at 202-647-1512 anytime, and we will connect you to our local embassy there in the country that you're at, or officials in Washington who can help you. Also, during crisis situations, oftentimes the Operations Center will stand up an interagency task force to deal with whatever the situation is. During COVID-19, we repatriated thousands of Americans who were traveling overseas and who wanted to come home at the beginning of the pandemic. We made sure that they got home safely. So those are just a couple of the ways that we help everyday Americans and also our State Department team here.
As an American diplomat for the past 25 years, I've had the honor of serving the American people in a number of countries in Asia, Latin America, and the Middle East, as well as in Washington. By promoting democracy, security, and prosperity abroad, and creating partnerships and policy initiatives through our shared values, I am proud to serve our country. That service, particularly to American citizens abroad, could not have been more stark than in March of 2020 in the early stages of the COVID pandemic. As the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs, we encountered thousands of Americans who had traveled to the region for tourism, study, business, missionary work, suddenly all stuck and unable to get out. In the confusion of COVID, governments shut down airports, locked down businesses, and prohibited internal travel. I traveled with a consular team to Lima, Peru, where we had the largest number of trapped Americans at the time, working alongside our embassy colleagues, our military, the Peruvian government, and our Washington staff to reach as many Americans as quickly as possible and help them get safe passage to the capital. our team recreated a makeshift airport customs and security screening process at a US-built hangar. We bussed and flew in Americans from remote provinces, expedited passports for newborns who hadn't gotten their documents yet, and got them safely on planes home. We negotiated permits with local officials and worked with charter plane companies. We connected Americans to family members at home and responded to inquiries from members of Congress and the press. Seeing those exhausted but relieved Americans getting on planes and repatriated home was the biggest reward for our teams, who have been working around the clock for weeks. It was a reminder to me personally of why I became a diplomat in the first place. That is, to serve the American people.
I'd like to talk specifically about how public diplomacy benefits the American people. Public diplomacy is about engaging with, unsurprisingly, the public, rather than the traditional government-to-government interaction. Public diplomacy in particular matters to the American people because it brings us ideas, talent, economic benefits, and goodwill. Exchanges alone, which represent just a fraction of the work done by public diplomacy practitioners at embassies and consulates around the world, bring academic and economic benefits to the United States. The exchange of talent and ideas going in both directions is how great ideas are born. Our exchanges also bring us economic benefits in many ways. I know of a number of exchange participants who have returned to their home countries and then established business connections with the people they met in the United States. When those U.S. companies open an office in that country to sell their product or make parts for it, they hire local staff who speak English and understand American business culture because of our programming overseas. Public diplomacy is also about how we tell our story of who we are. With social media feeds and Hollywood movies reaching audiences in every country around the world, nearly everyone has some idea of what America is as a nation and who Americans are as a people. Their ideas, however, are often incomplete, perhaps based solely on our pop culture, or worse, on misinformation spread by others. Through exchange programs, social media engagement, outreach to universities, tech conferences, and more, public diplomacy practitioners like myself work overseas to share America's full story. That means being honest about who we are, including presenting our flaws and weaknesses. We explain why the United States does what it does as a world leader to help people around the world understand our values and our mistakes. In my tours overseas, I've given presentations on American history to university students, led speaking clubs for English teachers, and organized hip-hop concerts and breakdancing performances. I've also worked with the Education Ministry in Kazakhstan to help them improve English learning in their schools, and given interviews explaining the visa process in Pakistan. All of these activities helped people in other countries understand who we are in America and find ways that we can work together instead of working against each other. I know I have done my job well when someone says that our interaction changed the way they see America for the better. My work may not appear on the front page of the newspaper or the top of your Twitter feed, but it makes the United States a better place. We keep America safe through high-level policies and international agreements, for sure. We also keep America safe by sharing our story.